All right, what's poppin', man? This is your boy EI the King, and this is the Incarceration Podcast, where I talk about prison, pre, post, and present, and how everything that I experienced throughout my incarceration has forever changed my life. This is the Incarceration.
All right, good afternoon. This is State of Florida versus Stephen Testa with multiple cases before the court.
This is the first time that we have a guest on the Incarceration Podcast. It is only right that my very first guest is a fellow convict. So I'm going to go ahead and honor my dog and allow him to introduce himself, man. So go ahead, man. Tell the viewer, who are you, bro? Tell us who you are.
Man, I ain't gonna lie, right? I ain't a big guy on labels, but if, not just a convict, but a convict from Cali.
There you go.
No, my name's, first off, thanks for having me out here.
Glad to have you, dog.
My name is Branden Terrell. Recently paroled from San Quentin State Prison after serving over a decade. Grew up Northern California, a little north of San Francisco. Fell into the lifestyle and found my way serving some time in prison after some poor choices.
That's real. So y'all see, man, it's only right. The first guest is a convict from Cali, who just
Yes,
paroled
sir.
from San Quentin, man. So I'm super excited, bro. It's an honor to have you on the show. So thank you for coming. So just go ahead and get to it, man. So hold on. Listen, man, stop right now what you're doing. Subscribe to this channel right now, the Incarceration Podcast. All right, let's get to it. All right, Brandon. So first of all, man, just give me a brief rundown of like your upbringing, your childhood. Just like your younger years, what was that like for you?
Yeah, man, growing up, I always wanted to be a pro athlete. Like I was any field I stepped on, whether it was baseball or football, I was the best. And all my role models were professional athletes. And really that was the only place I felt at home, right? Like the only place I really felt valued and had a real purpose and knew my identity was when I was playing ball. And, I like to say I was surrounded by love, but I had grandparents, parents, siblings, but like I went to 17 different schools, I was bouncing all over the place. And so a lot of insecurities, a lot of character defects came up and, getting in a lot of trouble. I was the kid, there's multiple different ways to get attention. I was the class clown and the kid always doing stupid things to get people to like him. And so my junior year, I was our football coach got fired through a scandal, and so I didn't have that security blanket of the football coach and his staff, and so the principal sent me with them and wanted me to do homeschool. And so I remember looking back the day I was calling the principal's office, and when I walked out, he said, I'm not going to expel you. I'm going to have you do the remainder of your junior year at home. You come back and carry it on your senior year and get you off to college. To me, no school meant no sports. And so I remember like reflecting back, like walking out of that principal's office, like my life ultimately started heading towards prison.
Yeah.
And so, obviously like I loved the game, baseball, football. The athletes were my role models, but as I became a teenager, I realized the lifestyle, the cars, the women, the money, all that stuff that comes with being a pro athlete. So once school and sports was taken from me, I went to the streets. Like I used to joke like I might not be a superstar, but I'm gonna be a ghetto superstar. And so Northern California, the pot industry, immediately started jacking pot, built up the funds and then started growing it. And, by the time I was 17, 18 years old, I was a full-on criminal. And so, with that, like I never really dipped into drugs and alcohol because I, was an athlete and, with the lack of identity, authentic identity, I didn't know who I was as a young man. And so I just started seeking validation in all the wrong places around all the wrong people. Took on this criminal belief system, and ultimately in 2012, when I took the life of Ryan, like it just was escalating. You know, I was, you know, once again, just anything. Money was like what my primary focus was. Right, money was the motivator, and you know, just everything. Right,
Mm.
everything you could think of, like crime wise, like in that criminal lifestyle. You know, the violence, just all of it. Like that was me. I was involved in a lot of stuff. And then, like I said, February 23rd, 2012, me and Ryan were growing a lot of pot. We had a couple operations going. I actually had been sober for 7 months because I knew I had a problem with alcohol, you know, and you know, some stuff was going on. There was some drama going on with the business, and I started drinking, had a couple drinks, and it's crazy because we actually went out to dinner, and everybody's ordering drinks, and I'm kind of like stressing, right? Because like I'm like, man, like, you know, I'm in the spot right now that we got some girls here, like I don't want to, like, I want to drink, but I know I shouldn't. And so I remember the voice was saying like, you know what, Brandon, it's probably not a good idea, but what the heck, like one drink ain't gonna hurt nobody.
Mm-hmm.
And so the waitress, you know, got to me and ordered a couple drinks, not one, two, and within hours after that, I was arrested for murder. Um,
Thanks. Let me stop you right there. I got some questions for you. Thank you for sharing that, bro, and
yeah,
being vulnerable. So, as you know, a youth, your passion being sports, and it's crazy because while you're mentioning this, bro, like it's my life, you know, playing, and it's not so much my life, but I think it's that such a. No, it's good. It's all good. Is it good? Is it cut
yep,
off? Because we can edit that.
yep.
Is it gonna do that again? You can
No,
mute it.
that's good.
All right, good. All right. So I think a common, reality with a lot of guys who, just do years in prison and end up in the streets. We all have a very common upbringing is, that we're athletes, we're consumed with sports, that's where our fulfillment is. And then because of whatever reason of getting in trouble in school, and then like we're expelled or we drop out, it's like that's a chapter, like a closing chapter and the beginning of a new one, like you mentioned, of like entering
Yeah,
to the street lifestyle. So give me an age range of when, like, okay, you left school and you started getting into the pot industry
yeah.
and you started, making your money in the pot industry. What was that age range, before the murder? And I want to lean into that, but what was the age range real quick, just so we can get an inside look of like how old you were?
Yeah, so like right before my 17th birthday,
Okay.
and it's crazy because I actually lived in Tampa for a minute.
Okay.
So like I moved out here to go to play football out here, but then it didn't work out. So I shot back to Cali, finished football season my junior year, and like immediately after football season, within like a month or so, it was a wrap. So I was like 16, almost 17, and probably within 3 months after that, so like 17 years old, like I'm kicking indoors, you know what I mean? Like really just like trying to be trying to be somebody just to
Mm,
fit in.
yeah. Okay. So now fast forwarding back into the situation with Ryan, and of course I want to be, sensitive and just, respect, that very intimate and just vulnerable, moment of your life. So Ryan was your business partner, and can you kind of walk us through that situation when it comes to the murder, as far as like what led you into prison?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I said, I knew I was living a lifestyle that I knew I was heading to prison. I
Mm,
never would have thought that I would have been wrapped up in a murder beef. Um, but the night of the crime, uh, you know, like I said, you know, there was some drama going on in the business. I'm really like going into the details isn't gonna help,
no,
but
I feel you.
um, I think so. We go out, we start drinking, and we get back, and you know, me and him had a conversation, and in this conversation, like we were talking about some drama that was going on, and one thing led to another, and then I made some comments to him and turned, and as I turned, he blasted me, and I went down, and there was a knife on the table, and the crazy thing is like I've always had this intuition, and prior to everything cracking off, like I was like, man, like something, like I'm not feeling this,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I'm gonna like backtrack a little bit, right? Like growing up, like I was taught like you never ask for help, Like as a man, like you deal with everything on your own,
Yeah.
right? Like that's the like that false male role belief system that like a lot of young men are taught, right? So like I knew I had an alcohol problem. I knew I had like this lifestyle that I shouldn't be living, but I wasn't gonna ask for help. So I'm gonna figure it out on my own. That's why I was staying sober on my own will, not seeking, nothing, right? No 12 steps, no God, no nothing. And the night everything cracked off, like I was like, man, like I'm not feeling this. Like I told myself, B, just leave. Like just leave. We're up in the mountains. Where am I gonna go? Right? We're up at this operation. And I'm like, screw it. If something happens, like, I know what I'm going to do. And sure enough, man, like a little bit later, some drama kicks off with me and Ryan. And when he blasted me, I went down. And immediately he had some dudes there that were trimming. And they jumped in. They were obviously his workers. And so I already had spotted that knife on the coffee table. And yeah, picked it up and ended up stabbing him 18 times. Like just went into a blackout. You know, that fight or flight, right? And you could relate, like the way we were brought up, like it's not really a flight's not an option. So we're always just fighting. And in that moment, like the whole world stopped. Like I instantly damaged a whole entire community, a whole family destroyed, 2 boys without a father. And it's crazy because like as a convict, as someone who like grew up, in this lifestyle, and there's rules to the lifestyle, like I could justify it in many different ways, but at the end of the day, like he's a human being.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he was a father, he was a son, and for a couple of years, for many years, until I really got right with God, like that was what my excuse was. Oh, he was a snitch. He was a rat, right? Cooperating with the feds, like all this stuff. And like that was how I was handling it to make myself feel better.
Yeah.
Because I was too much of a coward to just look in the mirror like, man, like you did this. Like,
Yeah. That's real. Thank you for sharing that, man. And once again, man, thank you for even being willing to speak on it. And condolences to Ryan's family. And again, like the whole purpose of this pod is we're not trying to glorify or just, give views for talking about like, controversial things or the murder case, but we want to get an authentic, inside real look of your life, my life, as I share about my incarceration and everything that it entails, man, the emotions, what was going through our mind, just so we can like genuinely like peel back these layers and work through these things and talk about it to bring awareness and ultimately bring about the resolve and the solution to these things and to the problems in the streets. So can you share with me like what happened to like after the murder? Like how were you arrested? Number one, like tell me like how did you feel afterwards, like after committing this murder? Like how did you feel personally inside? Like how were you arrested? And kind of give me a brief look into like that time window of like after the murder, how you felt mentally, emotionally, and then how did you get arrested, and then like the beginning stage of your incarceration, because we know that weight all too well weighing in on us right at the beginning. Should you share that with us?
No, for sure. So like immediately after, once again, like I was wasted, right? Like I was drunk, I was high, did some coke, like everything. Like once I took them first drinks at the bar or the restaurant, like we went back to the house, anything that was there, I was doing it, right? So I was pretty out of it. And immediately after, man, I just like I didn't even know, like couldn't even fathom like what had just taken place. Obviously, like it wasn't a pretty sight, you know what I mean? Just lots of blood, and it's great for 6-7 months. Every time I close my eyes to go to sleep, all I would see is blood. And I kind of wandered out to the front of the house, and one of the girls that was there, she's like, Branden, get in the car, right? And still, I'm not even like understanding that I just took Ryan's life, right? I'm just like kind of like in a daze. Everything's like just like slow motion, but I can't understand really what is all going on. Just kind of going through the motions. So I jump in the car with her, we're cruising, and now like I'm starting to like really like trip out, like, man, like something bad just happened still. And I think subconsciously, like, I'm just not wanting to admit what I just had done,
Yeah.
right? And so like I went back to that, like, almost that paranoia, that like intuition I had, like, and so I like started tripping out on this girl, and we're out in the woods, right? And I'm like, pull over, and I'm trying to ask her questions because, you know, there was like, just I'm just trying to ask her questions, like what's going on, like what just happened. And I told her, I made her get out of the car, and I jumped in the car and just took off. And I had been hit with a shovel during the whole like fight because there's a couple of his partners. And I was just covered in blood. And so I'm like, I don't know if I was hit. I don't know like what was, what was really going on. All I want to do is get to my mom and give her a hug because like I'm thinking like I don't know if I'm gonna die. I don't
How
know.
old were you right here?
23.
Okay.
Right.
Keep going.
And so I just wanted to get to my mom to give her a hug. And so I'm driving, and probably like 15, 20 minutes later, a squad car got behind me, and we were in a chase for about 2.5 hours all through Sac. And then, the car came to a stop. A couple German Shepherds, came after me. And it's crazy because I probably would have been one of them people you see shot by the cops had it not been for me on the phone with my mom. I'm talking to my mom, trying to tell her, you know what I mean? Like, just
So you're in a high-speed chase, calling your mom, explaining to her everything that happened.
And just like trying to like apologize for some of the things I've done in my life, like get right? Because like I don't know if I'm going to prison or I don't know if I'm gonna die.
This might be your last conversation.
This might be my last conversation, right? And so I got my mom on the phone, and then she's like, "Oh my gosh!" So she tells my dad, like, get a hold of like dispatch, right? And so like they were able to like notify law enforcement that like they're chasing my son. Darn. And so she like was like, yeah, he don't have no gun on him. Right? And so like I think like that pressure of them, and then she I don't know what else she did, but when I was pulled over, when the car finally like blew up because I went through a couple spike strips, and the car just didn't go no more. And I just remember opening the door, and a couple of dogs pulled me out of the car. And then like everything hit, like, man, like
this is it.
Yeah. I'm probably never gonna see freedom again.
Dang. So they arrest you, and what county jail do they take you to? And then like kind of walk us through briefly before we begin to lean into your incarceration.
Yeah.
Like what county jail did they take you to? And like just give us an inside look of what you're thinking, how you're feeling those first couple of days, first week or couple weeks in the county jail, and what's going on with the case, all of it.
For sure. So they take me to the hospital, stitch me up from the dogs, do some DNA stuff, and take me back to Nevada County, which is Northern California. And the detectives, they put me in a room. Detectives came in and tried to have a conversation. And I'm like, what am I being charged with? And they told me first-degree murder. Said what happened, and they had said, we're arresting you for taking the life of Ryan Roth. And so they wanted to talk, and that's when obviously, I think I need an attorney. Yeah. And just get me to a cell. And so a couple days later, I get to my cell, and a couple days later, like the fog kind of had, this is kind of like the vision that I was given. The fog kind of had cleared, a lot of the emotions kind of, not that I wasn't carrying a lot of emotions, a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, but I just remember within a couple of days, like sitting in that jail cell, like no matter what happens, like I wanted, like, I need to help people, right? Like I need to help people live their best life through sobriety, right? But I still had hella issues, right? I had like a lot of issues, a lot of defects of character, a lot of insecurities, criminal mindset. So I'm fighting first-degree murder in this county jail, and it's small. It's like 250, 300 people, and then they don't really see homicide
cases that often.
So they had me in this ADSED Supermax area, and yeah, man, like I still had that criminal belief system, so I'm trying to make myself as comfortable as possible, and whether it's getting buddied up with some of the correctional officers so I could get, obviously there was the women's side of it, but then there's the, just the freebies, extra food, extra, you know what I mean, cell phone, whatever, you know how it is,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And but I remember about 3-4 months into it, man, like I had just so much guilt, so much shame, and so like I was battling like to like mentally, emotionally, spiritually, like I was just defeated. And I remember thinking about like, man, like I don't want to do life in prison, so like might as well just get this done now, right? Take my life now. And I wasn't gonna just hang myself in a cell, so I'm thinking of ways to like, go out, quote unquote, back then, like as a savage, and get on some of these cops and make them kill me. Obviously, like coward, I like to call myself a coward because you have these thoughts, and if we don't act on them, like obviously, like we could justify it as like consequences or just like too afraid, right? And so I was telling my mom, I was on the payphone talking to my mom, man, and I was telling her like, Mom, like I just don't know what to do. And that's when she had told me, you need to pick up a Bible. And so that's kind of when I not immediately, but I grabbed a Bible off the book cart and went back to the cell. And later that evening, I picked it up and, felt the comfort, right? Immediately as soon as I opened up the Bible. And that's when I was like, okay, like I started holding on to this. Didn't immediately identify as a Christian or any of that, but that's kind of when my walk with Christ began.
That's real, bro. So going into the county jail, knowing that you're being arrested for murder, I mean, obviously, like you said, man, just like the thoughts of suicide, you know what I mean? And just like the weight of everything weighing in on you. And that's one beautiful, aspect of like how God moves and works. Like at our lowest low, you know what I mean? You were facing, life in prison, just caught a murder charge, thinking about taking your life, but still in the midst of all that chaos, in the midst of all of that, like, darkness, the spirit of God just like beginning to, like you mentioned, it's like drop vision on you,
Yep.
desiring, to help people live a lifestyle of sobriety and to steer away from the street lifestyle that you were living and the consequences you're already facing. And then ultimately as well, like you mentioned, your mother like encouraging you to, read the Bible, and
Yep.
God begins to draw you and you commit your life to Christ and receive salvation as your lowest low. That's beautiful, man. Just a story of redemption, real life, experience of redemption in the
Yeah.
midst of our lowest low.
And the crazy thing is like the problems didn't stop,
Yeah.
but like I experienced something that like was helping me with like the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, heartache, the pain that I was feeling. But I still had a lot of issues and was still operating underneath this criminal mindset. So like God was working, but I was still trying to go in my own direction,
Yeah. The process began
The
there, but
process began.
there's a lot of work
Yeah,
that
there was
needs
heck
to
of work
happen.
to go,
Of course.
and we'll get into that. But yeah.
Yeah. So whenever you get saved in the county jail, so you're still awaiting your sentencing. How much time do you get sentenced to? And then like how did you feel when you got sentenced? And then begin to take us into the journey of your incarceration and what prison you went to. What was your prison experience like? Go ahead and take us there.
For sure. So yeah, I was fighting first degree murder, trying to put everything together to get an attorney. So I was just rolling with a public defender, and she's like, "I can get you a deal right now, second degree murder, 15 to life." I'm like, that don't sound like a deal.
Yeah.
So eventually got my attorney, and like started fighting my case, and ended up taking a deal for 11 years with the knife. They dropped the knife enhancement, so I just took 11 years for voluntary manslaughter. Took 2 years. I was in county jail for 22 months. Anyone who's done any time in county, like that's a long time to.
That's hard time right there.
That's hard time, right? Like everybody was like, can't wait to get to prison, right? And like on one end, like sounds cool, but you hear a lot of like horror stories about prison, you know what I mean? And I kind of had it made in that county jail. But I ended up taking 11 years. The DA actually offered me 7 years with 2 strikes. And I had turned that down. 2 strikes in California, 3 strike law, like, you know, I actually, like, I told my attorney, I said, ask my mom. Like, I'm not cool with 2 strikes, but 7 years sounds good. Probably do 5, get out.
Explain that real quick. Whenever you say the 2 strike rule, that means if you get in trouble twice after that incarceration, they give you life?
No, so you got the 3 strike law. And
Okay.
so 3 felonies, you're struck out. You could possibly do life in prison. It don't matter if it's violent or not. I
Yeah.
got homies right now serving life sentences for petty burglary,
Yeah.
you know, stealing a backpack,
Yeah.
36 years to life.
Yeah.
Just because they done it 3 times or something similar. So when they had offered me 7 years with 2 strikes, I'm going to maximum security. I'm still like a knucklehead.
Yeah.
Get in a fight, break someone's nose, anything.
And
Like
you're 23 at this time,
I'm
right?
23, so like that's a 3rd strike,
Yeah.
you know. And so I ended up taking the 11 years with 1 strike. And yeah, went off to state prison, California State Prison. They shot me out to Tracy, which is like the reception center. So anytime you leave county jail and you're sentenced to California Department of Corrections, you go to a reception center, and then you sit there from anywhere from 90 days to 6 months, sometimes a year, depending if you get in trouble and you go to the hole in and out. And I was only there for about 90 days or so.
It's like a transition prison
Yep.
before you get to your permanent spot.
Yep, they take you
Yeah.
there. They take you, you know, do all your medical stuff, evaluate you how many points you have. So depending on how many points you have, that determines what level you are. So I was at level 4, which is max. Level 1, fire camp, you know, minimum security is level 1. 2 is medium minimum, and then level 3 is like medium max, and then 4 is max. So they had shot me from Tracy State Prison to Pleasant Valley State Prison, Corcoran State Prison. Then I went off to Pleasant Valley State Prison, and I did probably 2 years at Pleasant Valley. And I remember when I went through Corcoran. So Corcoran's like the shoe. Pelican Bay and Corcoran are like where all the, like, you know, there's gang members all throughout the state, but like all the validated, like the security housing units at Corcoran. And so, you know, guys been stuck there for, you know, 10, 15, 20 years, just slammed. And so it's like, we call it like the post office
Yeah.
for the prison system, because anybody who's going through there who's GP and is going to be shooting out to a main line, like whether it's correctional staff or porters, you know, incarcerated people who are like porters, they're going to get you kites. They're going to get you messages to, you know, hoop up and take to whatever prison you're going to. So
Explain that a little bit for the viewer who doesn't understand what you're talking about. Just real briefly, give us a rundown of what that is, what that means.
so like
And like kites and like the porters carrying it. Like
yeah,
explain what that is.
so like a kite is basically like a message. It could be a hit, it could be instructions on where to send money. You know what I mean? A lot of the times it's hits. You know, someone who needs to be whacked or someone who needs to go. And so, you know, you shoot it. If you're locked in a cell, for the people who are slammed, like the validated gang members who were slammed in the shoe in the hole at Corcoran, like that, they usually will probably shoot it to a cop, and then the cop will give it to a porter to take to another yard, and then somehow they find out the bus routes and who's going to what prison. And so, you know, night before I'm leaving, dude shows up, hey, you're going to Pleasant Valley tomorrow, take this, give this to whoever has the keys for the yard. Whoever has the keys for the yards, obviously the shot caller. You know, not to like open it, right? Like, you know, you don't want to see what's on it. You're definitely curious, right? But like, you know, if you're loyal to the game, you're just putting in your work and passing it to the next guy, right? And so
Let me interrupt you real quick.
Yeah.
Are you affiliated at this point?
so in California, like if you're white, pretty much if you're GP, you're affiliated with someone, right?
General population.
Yeah, if you're
GP.
GP, right, like you're affiliated. So like I just roll, you know, with the whites, but like, I mean, they're you know, labeled a security threat group, you know, and you got the skinheads, you got the AB, you got different factions inside it. But at the end of the day, on the prison yard, whites, blacks, Mexicans, north and south, you got your northerners and your southerners, and then you got your others. Like that's all. So everything's broke down, and if anything hits in between races, like everybody's going. So yeah, like, you're linked up.
Mm.
And
Were you affiliated on the streets, or did your ties only come to whenever you got sentenced to
so I
prison?
roll like I had a lot of people that I rolled with like in the motorcycle world, like
Mm.
motorcycle gang world, but like not actually, you know what? I had a lot of people that were affiliated to some prison gangs, but I never linked up. Like
Mm.
I just kind of rolled solo.
So whenever you caught your when you caught your bid, you already knew kind of
I was gamed
you
up.
already knew what you were looking to
Yep.
face whenever you went in prison. So you kind of just got in where you fit in. You knew that
Yep.
you would be, like getting affiliated, like you mentioned with whites and all
Yep.
that. So you just kind of, just went ahead and went through the process that you already knew you was about to take.
Yeah, for sure. And I educated myself. Like I
Mm,
know I'm about to go do a minimum 10 years. So I'm educating myself, whether it's reading, whether it's, writing. I had access to the streets, while I was in county. So I just educated myself and it's crazy because I look like this. I was tattooed up before I got to prison.
mm,
So like, it's crazy because like looks and like everything's like a popularity game, right?
mm,
So like if you look the part, like people just assume it, and like I
mm.
wasn't BSing, I
Yeah.
wasn't lying, but like you want to like lean on me and like give me extra favor because I look like I'm a regular.
Mm,
Like cool, like
yeah.
I'm gonna manipulate you and
Mm,
stay comfortable and
mm,
and safe, right? So it's a game, right? It's a
mm.
mind game, right? It's a psychological warfare. Most of it's psychological warfare. You
Yeah.
just always got to be on your toe thinking like how are you going to get through I called it like a treacherous soap opera.
Yeah.
Like people just get killed though,
Yeah.
stabbed and killed, like
Yeah.
politicking in California. And so anyways, like I get to Pleasant Valley and my first experience on the main line on the yard, uh I shoot the kite that I took from Corcoran to Pleasant Valley, shoot it out, it gets to who it needed to get to. And so you're on orientation. So it took me about 10 days. I'm locked in the cell, and then they clear you to go out to yard. And as soon as you hit the yard, you show them your paperwork, make sure, you ain't, actually before, as soon as I came off the bus while I'm in orientation, I shot out my paperwork to the yard. They brought it back, and they're just making sure you ain't a rat, you ain't a sex offender, no weird stuff like that. And so when I finally was able to hit the yard, the he was actually a P9 skinhead. He had the keys to the yard. He spun some laps to me. And he's like, hey, so thank you for bringing that one time that kite. He said, did you read it? I said, nah, man, you know how it is, right? And he said, okay. He said, well, over the next couple of days, you're gonna see some people disappear, and that was what you delivered. It was basically
Hit.
a hit, right?
Yeah.
And so sure enough, right, seen couple stabbings take place, and like it's crazy because like naturally like people don't. It's not like natural instinct to watch,
Mm,
or not watch, but like be excited to see someone get stabbed or that type of stuff. So like there's this guilt and this shame, like man, like I want to know more. Like why is this dude getting? What's the real reason of him getting
story
stabbed,
behind
right?
it. Yeah.
And I remember the one man, like I still like think of it. And it's like man, like that was crazy. Like there was a softball game going out on the yard, and like everybody's just like normal softball game. So anybody who's listening, like just think like being out at the softball field, playing a little adult softball, everybody's having fun. And then, a little bit into the game, like the energy just like evaporated and everything's like still. People are going through the motions playing, but like start looking around like this is weird. And next thing you know, like you look over on the corner of the yard and you got two skinheads just slicing dude's throat. And then they take off running, throw the weapon down the drain, and just they're laughing. They think it's funny. Cops don't even know. Dude's over there leaking. So I'm like, man, this is real. So that is
Mm,
never gonna be me. And so like that's just kind of that's how I was introduced to prison time.
mm.
And so for the next couple of years, I just dodged and weaved and did what I had to not become a victim and not find myself in the hole. And by the grace of God, I was able to reduce my points and get shot to San Quentin, which is a level 2. Um, and I thought life was gonna be good once I hit a level 2, but God had something else in mind for me.
All right. So, your entrance into prison just complete culture shock. You see you in the middle of gangland, it's going down. You're like, dang, I just got to survive and make it through.
Yep.
And what's crazy is because I don't know anything about California prisons, just from the brief, like interactions I may have seen on YouTube or whatever the stories I've heard. I obviously know it goes down in Cali. But I always thought that San Quentin was like the worst of the worst in Cali. So is that not necessarily true? Where you were at first, was that worse than San Quentin? And then segue us, take us into your transition in San Quentin, and then speed us up to when things begin to change, your routine, your structure, and then we'll go ahead and move forward to your release.
For sure. So yes, in San Quentin, everybody thinks that, right? Because back in the 80s and 90s, like California was like, or San Quentin was, one is death row. It still is death row. That's where they house, anybody sentenced to death. So you have that reputation. But then all through the 80s and 90s, like that's where the Aryan Brotherhood and all the the Mexican Mafia, the Black Guerrilla family, like that's where that was their house. And so like Murder Alley, like there's all places all over San Quentin that like there's history of bloodshed. And today though, it's the opposite. It's a low, obviously structural wise, because there's so many blind spots and it's such an old prison, they've built newer prisons that are designed to be more safe, right? And cohesive to, a more threatened prisoner, right? So because it's in the Bay Area, very liberal, lots of stuff going on, lots of resources. Today it's the opposite. Like there's over 3,000 volunteers going into the prison every year. Over 100 self-help programs, college on campus, we call it campus, college program, people getting their AAs, bachelor's, master's. So it's the opposite. And when I arrived, like that's when I originally, like I wanted to go to San Quentin for two reasons. They had a baseball program, the only baseball program in the country that plays civilian teams, and a college program. I went through prison, I go hit the max yards, and get to San Quentin, I already have a false mail roll belief system that I'm operating under. Then I pick up this this prison belief system, and so I get to San Quentin, and it's like it's a level 2. Like it's so much more relaxed. They shot me to a dorm. I ain't ever done time in a dorm, so that was like culture shock, and ultimately I couldn't do it. Like I was like, man, I'm not gonna do I think I had like 6 years to do at the time. I'm like, I'm not doing 6 years in a dorm. And so I justified a reason like why I need to get out of that prison and go back to cell living, which is at least the level 3 max yard. And so I found a dude who had bad paperwork, went and jumped on him. And in the process of me jumping on him, because the only way you could transfer out of prison if you want to remain GP and stay in good standing is through violence. Like you can't go to your counselors or go to the officers like, oh, I don't want to be at this prison. It's not an option.
Yeah.
And so I picked a dude. I was like, I'm going to get him and, get up out of here. And in the process, a guard had come, and it's crazy because I knew everybody in the Bay, like just from the stuff I was doing before going to prison, with the crew, with some of my family and friends, stunt riding Harleys, and just like the crew I had, like we knew a lot of people. And so I had known a lot of officers, or a lot of officers had known me. And this officer who knew me, he didn't want to use pepper spray or the baton. And so he comes running up to pull me off of a dude, and I just turn and blast him.
Oh, man.
And so, if anybody knows anything about like prison, they ain't really tripping if you fight each other, but you don't hit one of them. So they did their thing with me. And I ended up doing almost a year in solitary confinement, picked up 4 additional years. And so because like my past and just, kind of the reputation that I had at San Quentin, they decided to put me in the adjustment center. So the adjustment center is the hole for death row. It was originally created for when guys get sentenced to death, they go to the adjustment center for undetermined amount of time until the administration feels they could go out to the death row housing unit. But it's also used for the hole for the guys on death row. So it's like the most secure housing unit in the state. I had been sent there, and it was like, it was bittersweet because on one end, and like I really was delivered. My addiction, like God delivered me during this time. But like it was a scary time because like I'm surrounded by serial killers.
Mm-hmm.
Like the one dude who Stomper, they call him Stomper. He white dude, AB. I think he had like 8 bodies, and we were out. Obviously, when they take us to the yard, we're in walk-alone cages, and we were set out on the yard. And he's just talking to me like, I got so much points stacking up on me. I have this DA referral. Like I'm going to court now because hitting the officer. And he's like, man, like what do you want? Like what do you want out of life? You want to go see your family, or like you want to be a prison tough guy? And I'm like, well, like, yeah, I want to go to my family. He says, then, man, like, if you're trying to be like that prison tough guy, go kill word for word, kill everything till you come back here. Cause like, this is the worst of the worst. Everybody else is faking it. He says, if I could go back before I ever committed a crime and ever got linked up with the gangs, I would have never chose this life, but I'm committed. And like, this was the one dude that like, he'd take his glass off. The one person that like, I really like, this dude's scary. Like, I'm not trying to like, and I'm only like God-fearing man, but like this is that one dude who like, yeah, I'm cool, and he's like, he gave me this perspective. And so I went back to the cell that day, and it was just like, man, like God hit me. Like I was like, that's when I was delivered.
Man, that's dope, bro.
Yeah.
That's savage.
Yeah.
So God using somebody who could really speak to you and get your attention, and
someone that like you would never think,
yeah,
like literally a serial killer,
yeah,
like a dude who's killed like 8 people and is like speaking this like wisdom into me that led me to like getting on my knees and giving my addiction to God.
That's real.
And really, like, it was more to it. Like, ultimately, that it was the day before my youngest brother's birthday. Benny has Asperger's form of autism, and so I remember praying for him, like God, like heal him. Benny was struggling, no medication, no doctor's gonna take Benny's struggles away. And so in that moment, and this is once again like the same day after later that day after having this conversation with Stomper on the yard, and I'm like, take, heal Benny. And God just like, what are you going to do for me? And like, just screamed. It was like the loudest voice I've ever heard, but like, yet the quietest. The guys next to me didn't hear it, right?
Yeah.
But like, in that moment, I was like, man, like, you want me to give my addiction? Like, a lot of people who I call our rookie Christians, right? We're always like, when we go to the throne for prayer, we're always asking for something. Like, I need, and it's okay. Like, he's going to give us everything we ask for as long as it aligns with the kingdom. But like anytime I'd be in trouble, like asking, like, I need protection, I need, whatever it may be. And so he just like, what are you gonna do for me? And I realized I just need to give him my addiction. Like, he could use me, but I just need to like let him handle the problems and set back. And so I made the promise never do use alcohol and drugs again, and sober since.
Oh, man, bro, that's huge, man. Congratulations,
Yeah.
G. Salute. All right, so fast forward us, you make your commitment, unto the Lord and just surrender everything unto Christ. And now give us briefly that transition throughout the rest of your incarceration. What takes place, like with the structure of your time, how you spent your time, did you get educated, what did you get involved in, and then begin to take us into your release.
For sure. So like, obviously, like, I'm facing, they wanted to give me 8 to 15 more years for hitting the cop. Definitely not going to be level 2 no more. All kinds of hurdles, right? All kinds of like problems that I'm facing. But I get on my knees. I give my life to God. I really like finally felt this forgiveness, because like I was still carrying shame and guilt. I hadn't forgiven myself yet for taking Ryan's life. And so like, May 21st, 2016 was the day like I really gave my addiction to God. And I spent till July, my shoe term was up, and the warden, I went to committee, still fighting court, and I said, man, I said, your officer wasn't an intended target. I said, I don't care if we're wearing green or blue, like, I'm a man, and I'm gonna tell you right now, like, he wasn't someone that I was trying to go after. I said, you give me one chance, to stay here and take advantage of these opportunities, I ain't gonna let you down. And I was able to stay at San Quentin, right? Like I had to, like there was a couple times for like the next year that they quote unquote had to put me up for transfer because of my points, but the transfer would run out. I wasn't put on a bus, and that was stressful, right? Like just like man, like this, like getting transferred to another prison. But God broke down every barrier that that man put up, and so I still had all these issues, but I'm at a place where there's like over 100 self-help programs. So all I had to do is pull myself around some good people, which there's a lot of good dudes there. There's a lot of good dudes that had like crazy reputations from being gangsters back in the day that are serving life in prison. So I just, circled myself around some good solid dudes and followed them to the programs. And, one thing led to the next. The next thing I'm starting to learn how to communicate. I'm starting to understand my feelings and just how things go on. And
how old are you at this point?
So let's see. I was like late 20s.
All right. So
late 20s,
really
like 29. I'm maturing, right?
Yeah.
And just naturally maturing with age.
Of course.
But now I'm like doing work, right? Yeah. And I just like around the baseball program, I got involved with the baseball program, and like I just like no one was taking care of the baseball field. So I'd go out and work on the field, get it ready, and like I fell in love with service like through the field, because like I'd get the field ready, chalk it, be looking nice, ready to play on, and all the guys would just be like, man, this looks great. Like they were so grateful to have a nice field to play on. Like man, like I just love helping. Like that little thing of getting the field ready, like I just like fell in love with hooking people up and helping people and serving people. And so over the years I ended up taking a plea for 4 years with halftime, so I had to do 2 additional years as long as I stayed out of trouble for the staff on assault. So that put my out date originally until 2026. 2025 was my out date. But I just kept doing the right thing, dude. Like I just kept taking program after program. Next thing you know, I'm facilitating, teaching programs, started a couple programs. We'll talk about, one of my favorite ones here in a minute, but God just started opening up doors. People were coming into San Quentin that like, that I never even knew, but like just lots of influence. I started building so many relationships, and like good things were happening. It was trickling over to my family. Like despite all the chaos and the struggles we were going through, like God just, paved the way.
That's dope. Did you get educated as far as, did you get like a college degree while you were at San Quentin?
So I was doing a lot of college, and that's one of my regrets. When my grandfather died a couple years ago, like he was always like, do your college. And I stayed enrolled in the college. I'm a few credits away from getting an AA, but I was more interested in like building out some leadership programs that I like created at San Quentin that really had an impact. And then we started a film program. And so I was never like big on like traditional education, more so educate yourself on something that you want to do. And that was also like an excuse. So like I said, I do regret not putting my head in the books and getting, AA, bachelor's, master's. I got friends who got multiple masters while serving out their sentence. But like I was doing education a lot of different ways.
All right, so you have mentioned just your involvement in like leadership programs and facilitating and teaching. And obviously, man, it's like just hearing your story, man, completely different. And when it comes to the details, but the principle is like the exact same. You know what I mean? Like at the lowest low, God redeeming and transforming my life, and then beginning to show me like the strengths that I always seen were there from childhood, like you mentioned, like as an athlete and as a leader, and especially even in the streets, but it's outletted in a negative way. But when God redeems us, then God also redeems those gifts and those strengths. So now he's using you as a leader to impact people's lives. I'm sure, of course, obviously with the gospel, with ministry as well. But you had specifically mentioned some type of film program. Can you go into that in detail?
For sure. So, yeah, I mean, I think we're all gifted. Everybody has gifts. Not all our gifts are the same. Some of them are very similar, but if we allow God to use them for good, like we're gonna shine.
Sure.
Oftentimes we just use them for negative though, and it's not, it's because of the traumas and the pain that we went through. I feel there's no bad people. There's just good people that make bad choices. But to the film program, so right around COVID time, um, I was mentoring a young man who was getting ready to pro, who was going on to try to play pro baseball, Austin, and he was young stud, right? Like his story's crazy. We actually just finished a documentary that's going to be coming out about his transition out of prison, his journey to play professional baseball. But before he left, I was like, man, like we need to tell this story. And so through my network on the outside, like I found someone to direct and to do a documentary on him. And just this like during this time, I'm like really just like fall in love with storytelling, like because I'm having to like in my cell like write out like all the basically Austin's story, send out to the streets. And at San Quentin we had a media center, so they have a podcast, they have multiple podcasts, film department that does like uh all the in-house events, like they go film and put them on the institutional prison TV. Wasn't doing really anything else with it. And then there's the newspaper. A lot of them dudes are my homies. And like through me doing this documentary on the streets with Austin, like I'm just building good relationships with some of the folks that were, in the film area of the media center. And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna start like, they invited me to come down and start working with them. And we're like, you know what, like we think there's a way to get these stories out, out to the world. And so we started For This Productions, me and a few other guys who I was doing time with, and was given our Instagram, given website. The Department of Corrections like gave us like platforms to be able to like tell stories out, and so we started, the only incarcerated film crew in the country, For This Productions. And really our main mission was to humanize the incarcerated, because, when mainstream media talks about people inside, like they ain't humanizing them. Like they're like the labels, the everything you could think of, like the stories are always being told in a negative way. And so we're like, you know what, like we're gonna use our platform to humanize the incarcerated, and really, hopefully, in doing so, we'll help restore public safety and combat mass incarceration. And during that time, we built our own film curriculum. So when guys, like we could recruit guys come in, we could teach them how to do film, how to do storytelling, and then that way when they get out, they have skills to get a job. And so before we linked up with the nonprofit that kind of took us underneath their wing, because we needed the outside volunteer support. Before I came home, the executive director, Jesse Vasquez, who's my boss today, he offered me a job and it's like, man, like we're going to take these programs into other prisons. So we have San Quentin News, we have For This Productions, and then we have Uncuffed. We do some work with Ear Hustle. They're not a partner of ours, but we're taking those models and those media models and taking them into other institutions to give to the incarcerated folks doing time, so they could tell their stories in whatever prison they're at. And so coming home, like I was able to carry out, like we casted the vision too. Like when we started For This Productions, we're like we want to take this into other prisons, and we also want to take this program, because if we could do this in a prison, we could do this in underserved communities like youth centers, high schools that can't afford, like we could go raise money. We could, sell our films to raise money to give these opportunities to underserved youth. And so when I came home, Jesse offered me a job, and he's like, this is what we're going to do. And so like I'm out here today, being able to continue to support the incarcerated guys that I helped create For This with, tell their stories, get them out on Instagram and YouTube. But then also take that same program I started at San Quentin with the fellas and go into other prisons and hand off a film program. Let the folks, it don't have to be called For This. So basically, like you're taking a model, find the prison, recruit the incarcerated folks that are going to run the program, create a logo, create a name, it's yours.
That's dope.
Like, you know how much empowerment and how much value
course,
you give
bro.
to someone, and so we're just getting ready to launch out in North Carolina. We might have to scout some prisons out here in Florida, but like it's just now starting. But like I can't wait to just go into the prisons and spend time with people, love on them, and give them an opportunity to tell their own stories.
That's real, man. That's freaking huge. First of all, bro, salute you. That's such an honorable work, man, unto the Lord and just unto, our fellow convicts, incarcerated men. It's freaking beautiful, dog. I love it. And it's empowering and fulfilling in your life, God redeeming you, transforming your life, giving you vision, giving you purpose while you're incarcerated. And then while you're released, God bring it to fruition immediately. And you're walking it out now in real time. So real briefly, man, before we close out, number one, how long have you been out right now? And then how long have you been out? But also too, like, take us briefly just with the transition home. And can you think of any, like, I know for me, my transition was crazy. It was dope. It was amazing. It was beautiful. It was awesome, but it was also very challenging. So, kind of give us a brief walkthrough with that.
For sure. So I've been home 6 months, just over 6 months, September 9th,
It's crazy.
22. I walked out of them prison gates. Man, like, I feel like I had so many amazing people in my life, despite all the obstacles that, like, just re-entering society after doing a decade, like, you're faced with. Like, I've been able to make it through. Most importantly, like, I just had the love of my wife, my kids, my family, my boss, Jesse, my partner, like, that I did time with. He served 19 years, got out. Like, he gave me a job, and like that was all cool, and life is good, but like one of the biggest hurdles that I had to overcome, and I feel like in a lot of the prison programs, like reentry programs that they offer in institutions, they focus on jobs and housing.
Mm,
What about our old lifestyle,
yeah.
right? So like obviously I took a life. There's a family out there that probably doesn't, wish the best for me. Ryan's family, like, and rightfully so, right? And so coming home, we were all from the same area, and coming home, like there was some drama. Like Ryan's, the kid's mom, Heather, had, been on social media, like stirring up a lot of drama. And once again, like I deserved all of it,
Mm,
right? But then it led to going through our neighborhood, posting our whole town actually, flyers of like my face and like there's a murder in your neighborhood,
oh, damn.
be on alert, right? Like, and so it wasn't that it was like physical, like physically, like it just was like for me and my wife, like all this stuff was happening, and like we just had to sit down, like what do you want to do? Like, I really don't think there's like a instant threat, like a revenge threat, because someone's not gonna go create like publicly all this drama, but like out of their pain, like everybody expresses their pain differently.
Yeah.
And so like by me living in the same town as them, was it gonna continue to create harm? And I didn't want to create no harm, so we ended up moving. Like we relocated, just because it was smart. Like I know what I'm gonna do if I'm put in a situation to defend my family.
Mm,
And so it was like, why am I gonna put myself in a position to where I could, run into someone that doesn't, ain't feeling me, with my wife and kids. And so that was a challenging time, not just like emotionally, spiritually, mentally, but financially, like having to move and go through all that stuff. And so if it wasn't for like my support system and the people that love on me, like I would have probably failed during that time. And so like I feel for, it's hard for people, re-entering society when they don't have a support system. So I think that's one of the biggest things that, folks like yourself, me, lots of organizations, like we just got to continue doing and build off of giving people support and helping them navigate, because it ain't easy.
That's real, bro. All right, man. So closing out, man. Obviously the Incarceration podcast. We're on YouTube. We're on anywhere people can listen to podcasts. So tell the viewer, tell the listener.
One second.
All right. What you got here, man?
I ain't gonna come out from California without bringing some gifts, right? So we got you, and this right here came from the inside.
Okay.
There ain't too many too many of them, but we got a San Quentin calendar.
Oh,
that's the prison.
Okay.
And then a San Quentin media, same one I'm wearing.
Oh, that's fire. That's a prison right there?
Yep, that's the prison
see
right
that?
there. Yep.
Man, I'm finna hang this up on my wall, dog.
Yep, and then we got you a San Quentin media for this San Quentin News t-shirt.
Bro, thank you, man. It's an
Yeah.
honor, man. Listen, thank you to all the incarcerated men at San Quentin. I love y'all, praying for y'all, and hopefully, man, I'm coming there shortly, man. I'll be coming there shortly.
Yep, and for sure, like, you could For This Productions on YouTube, For This Productions on Instagram. Our nonprofit is Pollen Initiative on Instagram. And then you can see me at BrandenTerrellCoaching.com or on Instagram.
That's dope, bro. So listen, bro, it's an honor to have you, G. Thank you, man. You are the first guest on the Incarceration podcast, man, and it's only rightly so. So listen, man, y'all go ahead and subscribe to the Incarceration podcast. Light up the comments if you got any questions for Brandon. But in the comments, he'll get back at you. I'll get back at you. Any specific thoughts or feedback, light up the comments. And listen, man, this your boy E.I. the King. This is the Incarceration podcast, where I talk about prison, pre, post, and present, and how everything that I and he and we face through our incarceration has forever changed our life. This is the Incarceration.